Our speaker today, who I'm very happy to introduce, is Dr. Georgina Catacora-Vargas. And she is a Bolivian professor, researcher, and policy advisor in agroecology, biodiversity, and sustainable food systems. She focuses her work on gender and human rights. And presently, she is a Fulbright Scholar in residence at Ithaca College here in Ithaca. So I feel like this is really great to know, because if we have questions and want to follow up from the seminar, she's available to have conversations with, and I, for one, am really looking forward to doing that. She's also president of the Latin American Scientific Society of Agroecology and a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, IPES-Food. She's also an advisor to the Agroecology Fund. And her topic today is Women, Agroecology, and Dignified Care Roles, Resonances from her Latin American experiences. So join me, please, in welcoming Dr. Georgina Catacora-Vargas. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Well, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. And I would like also to extend my thanks to Dr. Rachel Besnes-Kerr, because she's the one who made the link to have the possibility to be here. For all the subjects, I am Georgina, and if you want to make it easier, Nina is fine. I am very much into agroecology, as you might realize in the brief introduction. And every time I start a talk, I would like to say that just to position myself from where I am speaking. I am a person who works in agroecology already for 25 years, mostly in Latin America. And based on the experiences from farmers, I can say agroecology works. And I am talking from there. So I just would like to put this in the frame to be very transparent where I'm coming from. This week is a very important week, and there is something very important that we are celebrating this Sunday, March 8th. Do you know what it is? I will ask Christina not to reply. Does anyone know what is March 8th in the world? Yes, please. Women's Day. Yes, the International Women's Day. And I chose this topic as part of my own reflection and perhaps little action to support women's rights and to recognize us as political and social actors and right holders. So I'm going to talk about women agroecology and the dignified care roles, bringing some reflections, just a very little, from the full breadth and richness of agroecology in Latin America, and I'm sure in many other regions. So, this is the other side. Okay. So perhaps I can use this one. Okay, shall I use that one? Okay, now it's working. Okay, so this talk is organized in first a snapshot on the state of women currently. Then I'm going to talk about the interrelationship between agroecology, biodiversity, and human rights. Some insights about the nexus of women, agroecology, and biodiversity, providing some examples. And final remarks, and hopefully having some time for a short dialogue and questions and answers. So I'm going to start first with the challenging part, the part that I don't like very much because it always brings bad news. But we need to see the status where we are in order to be even more motivated and convinced to change the current status. So despite all the efforts made locally, nationally, regionally, internationally, women still face and are the poorest in terms of material poverty. by 2020, there were 350 million women and girls who were in extreme poverty. That means surviving with less than $3 a day. And the problem is that because the structural factors that are causing this material poverty are not changing, in actual is increasing due to climate change. So by 2050, it's projected that 158 plus million women will also be part of this very impoverished group even more. So women, we are very important, half of the population, and in the rural world they are almost half as well. But the agricultural labor conditions are not necessarily the best ones, because less than 20% of women hold the ownership of land, and that prevents them of many processes and decision making, and just to thrive through agroecology as they deserve. And despite that, rural women work from 10 to 17 hours a day. That's insane. And in relation to food and nutrition, more than 80 million adult women suffer from moderate or severe food insecurity. And this number is less than 10% more than male. It's about 8% or something like that. That arguably could be a small number, but in terms of, or relative figure, but in terms of actual number, we are talking about more than 60 million women in comparison to men that suffer from undernourishment, and 31% of women in the age of 15 to 49 suffer from anemia. In relation to access to water and sanitation, 25% of women either do not have access to drinkable water or do not have access to safe managed sanitation. And on top of that, women are the responsible to provide water, not only food, not only the ones who are socially assigned the role to be food providers, but also water providers. And just an example, in sub-Saharan Africa, putting all the number of hours that women spend in collecting water, the sum is just insane, 40 billion hours a year. And if we just have some examples that from Guinea and Malawi, women spend 150 more hours than men just searching for water, making lines for carrying or having access to some and carrying the water back home. In Malawi, it's more than 8 times. So here we can see, just as an indicators, the inequality in the distribution of care roles. Once again, and as I mentioned before, there are many different instruments and there are many different efforts to try to reverse this inequality. And I focused on food, which is related to biodiversity, on water, and accordingly to food and nutrition, because they have lots to do with our ecology, as I'm going to talk briefly. Here I brought the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which entered into force in 1981, that this defines what working against discrimination mean. And for this treaty, which is a legally binding, that's why it's a treaty, discrimination against women means any kind of distinction, exclusion, or restriction just on the basis of sex. And that includes impairing, nullifying the recognition and the enjoyment of human rights among women. And those human rights are political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or other. Others include the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as approved by the United Nations General Assembly in 2022. So I am bringing also this here because I just gave some numbers on a snapshot on the conditions, current socio-ecological conditions of women. CEDAW has been adopted more than 45 years ago. And the plan of action to implement the Beijing Declaration was approved almost 30 years ago, or a bit more than 30 years ago. And the Beijing Declaration set up 12 critical criteria of concern to change the status of women, including from health to aspects related, for instance, their role and their how they are portrayed on media and the access that they have for communication. So it's quite a comprehensive. So there are efforts. The international community is doing something, but we are not getting there yet. So in this context, because this is the context where agroecology operates as a strategy to enhance and restore biodiversity and through that human rights, agroecology contributes certainly to addressing some of the key barriers that prevents women to realize human rights. And here I would like to stress contributes because agroecology, even in its integrality, is not going to have the capacity to resolve all problems, particularly the structural problems. So agroecology contributes to address some of those key issues. And how it does that? Because agroecology is, if I can describe in a way, in a perhaps more simple way, agroecology is the management of the ecosystem in such a way that respects and contributes to life to thrive. Not only non-human life, but also, I'm going to say it again, not only human life, but also non-human life. And that makes agroecology very much ecological, but also social and political, because through the management that implements the technical management, which is biodiverse, contributes to reestablish healthy ecosystems. And healthy ecosystems is the key, is the basis for having healthy human communities. This is why the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment is so crucial. Unfortunately, it was recognized so late in the whole spectrum of adoption of UN instruments in relation to human rights, but finally is recognized. So here I would like to make a differentiation that in most policymaking and also academic literature and technical literature is used in this as interchangeable manner, which is ecosystem functions in comparison to ecosystem services. And this has been in the context of the Convention of Biological Diversity and also the negotiations of the text and the assessments of the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, a constant issue of debate, because they are not the same. When we talk about ecosystem functions, we are talking about the ecological processes that are essential to maintain ecosystems. So it's very much related to intrinsic values. Ecosystem functions can be restored only through biodiversity. Through biodiverse systems are needed for the ecosystems to thrive and keep providing and keep sustaining itself. So it's very much about self-sustenance. From there, we can differentiate ecosystem services, which relates to the direct or indirect contributions of ecosystems to human well-being. So when we talk about ecosystem functions, we are talking about pollination, soil formation, temperature regulation, just to mention some, nutrient cycling, etc. When we are talking about ecosystem services, we are talking about food provision to humans, energy to humans, recreation, cultural identity, for instance. So they are very much different, and it's important to separate them, although also recognizing their close interactions. Because when we work in agroecology, we work to reestablish ecosystem services, ecosystem functions in such a way, or to be a path to achieve ecosystem services. So we have, yes, a human view, a human perspective. We don't leave it aside, but we start from a very ecocentric perspective, because actually they are interlinked. And this is a kind of, it sounds very simple, common sense. Actually, it says something very profound on the epistemology positioning of agroecology. So agroecology is biodiverse. So we can equate agroecology with biodiversity, because it consists of establishing biodiverse systems in time and space. That means, in simple words, associations. Agroecology is not monocrops with bioinputs. It's not monocrops without GMOs or monocrops without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. Agroecology is about biodiversity. In the same space, different species, vegetable and animal, just interacting and creating different an architecture of that uses the space and also maximizes the flow energy, particularly from the sun, in different layers. And that happens in one space and through time. That's one of the key aspects of agroecology, why it delivers and why it works. So if agroecology is biodiverse and it works and it's founded on biodiversity, therefore it's going to contribute to restore ecosystem functions, and that's going to contribute to the provision of ecosystem services. And since ecosystem services relate directly or indirectly to different aspects for human well-being, that's very much related to human rights. And there is the nexus between agroecology, biodiversity, and human rights. And agroecology follows principles. There is no one recipe. There is no technological package, because agroecology, one of the beauty of agroecology in relation to being so biodiverse is that it has the capacity to adapt to different contexts, social and ecological. Having few key features. One is being biodiverse, as we can see in these pictures. This is one very crucial aspect. This is crucial because this is going to contribute to create habitat for different organisms to thrive and to just inhabit the space. And from there, many different functions and services emerge that contribute to the self-sustenance of the system, but also other emerging properties like resilience, productivity, sustainability. So biodiversity is crucial. It's at the core of biodiversity. And another aspect is soil protection and minimal disturbance and protection, particularly with biomass, with what we have from this system. So in the world, everywhere, there are examples of agroecology from the very micro scale, like 8 square meters. Sorry, I am using the international system. Please make the arithmetics change, using, I don't know, square feet or something like that. I didn't do that mathematics, sorry. We're talking from the very micro scale to large scale. This is in my country, an example from my country, in a community organic garden, where people use about 8 square meters to produce a number of species. I'm going to mention this, develop a bit, in this presentation, to 10,000 hectares in Brazil, in a landless movement settlement, where they produced 11 varieties of rice. And they, what they harvest, they distributed in the school public food programs. So fulfilling the social objectives of agroecology. So from 8 square meters to 10,000 hectares, something we can conclude. Technically, agroecology is possible. And I would like to say there are hundreds of examples. So just to be sure that we are talking about the same, biodiversity refers to this diversity that we have within species, between species and ecosystems. And here I'm going to put some examples of agrobiodiversity, just for those who are perhaps not biology or ecology or agriculture or related majors. This definition is provided by the Convention of Biological Diversity and says biodiversity is the variability of all living organisms, either microorganisms, plant, animal organisms that exist, that are marine, aquatic, or terrestrial, in these 3 levels of organization. So when we are talking about within species, we are talking about different varieties of different breeds. If we are talking or thinking in animals, different species, the species, tomatoes is the different species, like apples, for instance. And apples are different than cows, just to put examples, very simple examples. And our ecosystems are the agricultural systems The one that is in the up is a monocrop and conventional agroecosystem, and the ones that are in the bottom are more closely to agroecological agroecosystems. Okay, so being said this, the next topic is the nexus between women, agroecology, and biodiversity. And I'm going to go over this with examples. This is the example that I mentioned to you, this very micro scale example, 8 square meters, in a city that is very much in the arid, well, we are in the tropics, but the Andes has changed our topography and climate. This is about 3,600 meters over sea level. I think that's 12,000 feet or something like that. Once again, I'm sorry for using the international units. So it is in a city that is very crowded, very steep, kind of crazy, but also beautiful in a sense. And in these small spaces, women, among other right holders, because now I'm going to shift to recognize them as right holders, produce a little food, not much, but that contributes to self-provisioning of food. But beyond producing food, which is biodiverse, and here they cultivate up to from 5 to 33 different species, they don't only get food for their bodies, but also they get, in these very healthy environments, food for their souls and minds. Because here they interact, it's a space for relaxation, no possibility of contamination with agrochemicals. And if it is being so safe, children also can participate, because women do not come alone. Women always come with the expanded family members or the household members. So thinking about women as a safe space together with children is part of dignifying, the possibility of dignifying care roles. Here is the this is 63, the total richness in this, in the whole area. There are 40 small plots, and we can see the distribution of this total richness or number of species that are produced. And we can see that vegetables are the majority, but also others, aromatic medicinal plants, flowers, and sweet fruits. So in total, they are we made a research, it's a master's degree research, what I'm presenting. Of course, I'm not presenting the results, but there are 36 in operation. They are less than 300 square meters in total, and they have a richness of 63 species. I'm sorry to say this, but there is no conventional system that works in such a small space and has this high level of richness in terms of biodiversity. So having this diversity is also part of a dignifying care role, because it contributes to families to supplement a diversity of sources of nutrients. I would like to move to another example, once again in my country. This time is a bit bigger, 21 square meters in average, in an area that is very, very arid. It looks like that. This is reaching almost 4,000 meters over sea level. So very arid. But the small artisanal greenhouses that these women manage are highly biodiverse, up to 60 different species. And the narratives that they say is that this is my market. This is where I get my food. They don't have stress for where or when or how much is going to cost the vegetables for their families, because this small area at that high diversity contributes to supply all year round to nutrients, to food, to people, to in terms of vegetables to a household that is composed up to 4 members. So in this area where you can see the roads are not the best, there is water scarcity, And in La Paz, in general, there is high water scarcity. So a production system that adapts to the piece of land that women have, which is very small, and having a limited access to services like water, then this is a strategy, and once again, undignifying context for role-taking, to just assume and exert the care roles. This is another example, this time from an indigenous community. I moved from the highlands to the lowlands of Bolivia. This is the Guarani indigenous people, and part of the integral forest management that they implement, they have also these small patches or agroecological vegetable gardens that follow kind of a patchy design within the forest. The story of this particular woman is very touchy because she suffered domestic violence, and not only physical but also economic violence, which is something that many women also face. And agroecology has been a strategy for her, and a dignified strategy for her, to provide food for herself, her family, and the surplus to her community. In this indigenous nation, women also play a very crucial role in seed conservation, agrobiodiversity conservation, not only the elders, but also young women, girls. And they are being quite successful in cultivating, in preserving the different varieties of native maize. That's what we call. We are not center of origin, but we are secondary center of origin, because the diversity of maize that exists in the Andes is very high. So they are starting, or they have a starting economic dynamic, and they now have a system by which they produce and collect under agroecological management different varieties of maize, and they exchange it and they give them as loans as the local people. And instead of getting back the loan back in money, they get it back in seeds. So if a family gets as a loan 5 kilos of seeds, the family will return 5 kilos plus 5 other kilos just to contribute to the seed to be preserved and to be distributed. I would like to move to another scenario. This is a bit larger, 800 square meters, still in the very small scale, because this is once again what women have access to. In this case, this family and this production that is led by this young woman, they don't have land. They are landless peasants, and what they produce sustains them economically. So what they produced is about 34 different vegetable species, and the harvest and the productivity that they have in 1 year, that includes 2 seasons, the winter and the summer season, is 5 tons per year. That equates to 6.26 tons per hectare from this high biodiversity. I would like to stress in this number, because if we compare this productivity with very high-tech management of, for instance, GM soybean, the literature says that the productivity of this system is 6 tons per hectare. However, that's what the literature says. The official records in the UN Food and Agriculture organization says, the official number says that in terms of soybean, in Argentina, one of the leading countries in producing GM soybean is 1.7 tons per hectare as per 2023. And if we consider the US, for that same date, the official data says 3.4 tons per hectare. So the arithmetic is very clear. In this system, we have biodiversity. Thanks to biodiversity, ecosystem functions that contribute, for instance, to restore soil. And with that, a number of processes that contribute to have high quality products, very diverse in a good volume. That contributes to fulfill the criteria of healthy food and healthy diets, which is quantity, quality, and diversity. Agroecology contributes to these three. This is not new. This is a graph from 1999. I purposefully brought these old numbers and the statistics because it is not new. We know already for a number of decades that the smaller the area, the more diversified it's going to be as a strategy to cope with different factors, risk factors for like weather, climate, also economic variability. So we know that the smaller, the more diverse. And also we know, and this is a paper from 2009, also once again, I am bringing those very old pieces of research because there is already enough knowledge and for a long time that we know that agroecology works. And in this meta-analysis, what the researchers found that agroecology, in this case, it was called organic because the term agroecology became harmless to use since 2014 when the UN Food and Agriculture Organization organized an international symposium on agroecology. So then, yeah, the international community opened up to it. So what it is in this research is not only organic, but also agroecology. But the point is that they found, particularly in developing countries, that agroecology has the capacity to feed current population. And it actually can yield up to 80% more than current conventional farming. Of course, this is an average. So all the experience, this very incomplete description of these cases of the hundreds that exist are mainly invisible, and that's a problem. Being invisible is very aggressive because this woman and agroecology itself, it doesn't reach the statistics. So part of the advocacy is to develop different methodologies that contribute to visualize the work and the benefits of agroecology and women there. But not only women, also men, also children, indigenous peoples, and others. So this is a work done by very committed colleagues, women from Brazil, who developed the agroecological logbooks that has a different process that includes, among others, to register 4 things that women produce in their backyards agroecologically. What they consume, what they share or give as gift, what they exchange, and what they sell. 4 things to cover all the variety and the quantity of what they produced in their backyards because they don't have access to land. Part of the methodology includes visualizing what they do. They make kind of drawings on the maps, and an exercise and a project that it was carried out included in different states of Brazil almost 900 women. And they made this record for register what they produced and how it was distributed among these 4 categories that I just mentioned. And what they found is that if we give value to all that is produced, and that is for provisioning of food to families, what is exchanged, meaning with exception of sale, what is happening in non-monetary economy. In 1 year, these 900 women produced food that equals to a bit more than $2,069 US. This is about an average of $307 per woman per year. That might seem, very irrelevant, but in a situation where access to monetary resources is so scarce, if at all exist, and considering that this comes from a backyard, this really makes a difference in the economy of women. But Beyond that, what this exercise does is contributes to women to recognize themselves as a providers, even if they are in a context not really a friendly context. So that self-recognition is also crucial, and we work on that because that later derives on self-esteem and self-appreciation. This is not new. There is a recent research that shows that if we, for instance, consider and we include in the mathematics not only what it is sold and part of a monetary economy, but also we give value to the production that goes and is part of non-monetary economies, we find that agroecology can be very efficient. These are the agroecological plots in comparison to the conventional. So we calculated for this research the gross value per square meter and also the added value. And we can see here that conventional has a less efficient economic performance. And when we consider and we actually extract all the cost from the total output, conventional farming is actually quite inefficient and has even red numbers. So said this in another way, what we found out is that those who are producing agroecologically, in this case, an agroforestry system, they have the capacity to retain and capture that value up to 69%. While in the conventional among the conventional farmers, the highest retention value was 51%. What does it mean? And this is very much related to economic autonomy. That from the income, from all the income generated in agroecological agroforestry systems, the families can hold up that monetary income up to 96%. So 4% is just goes out there to keep supporting the economy that surrounds them. But in conventional farming, the numbers get very low, even negative numbers as mentioned before. So here I would like to bring something that a good friend and someone who I respect a lot from Colombia said, based on a research that she did on how women manage food provision through agroecology in the context of armed conflicts in Colombia. She and her colleague concluded that to the extent that our ecosystems are more biodiverse, they are more feminized, which distances them from monocultures that have the market as a priority and also usually is the responsibility of men. So as final remarks from all what I mentioned, I would like to stress on some things. That agroecology is biodiverse, but we don't just put things crazy, any species. We work on that biodiversity that is functional, that is going to contribute to restore the ecosystem, and with that also restore the provision of benefits to the families, the communities that are linked to agroecology. Agroecology and this notion of biodiversity, I would like to stress in respect to the knowledge of indigenous people, is not something that agroecology of a group of scientists just came up. Agroecology is very much based on traditional knowledge that and small-scale farming that uses biodiverse systems. So agroecology integrates knowledge with other types of knowledge, technical and academic. The work that women do, now going to women, in agroecosystem management and food provision and all the activities around agroecology for that care role extends beyond the plot, but also has impacts at food level and even beyond territorial level. However, this is not visualized, this is not considered, not even been explicit in the current literature. This comes from literature review that we did in the Andes, and what we see is that the majority of the work that relates to women and ecosystem management and agroecology in certain ways to not indicate to which level women are working. That's also a way of invisibilizing the work that they do. And something also that we found in the literature is the majority of the ecosystem management that women exert in the Andes relate very much to biodiverse systems, agroecological, traditional farming, harvesting from the wild, and agroforestry systems. So this review, I hope I was able to share with you that agroecology and women are mutually supportive, because agroecology provides women the possibility to realize many rights and have dignifying care roles in a context where that is very antagonistic against them. No credits, no technical assistance, no or land ownership, overburden of work, etc. But at the same time, women contribute to agroecology. So it's not one-way support, but also women contribute to recreate agroecology with their knowledge, with their action. So that's why both are mutually supportive. And once again, from this very incomplete and very kind of in a rush presentation, agroecology certainly contributes to dignify the care roles imposed on women. This is important to recall in this year that we are in the year, the International Year of Women Farmers, which and having the goal to recognize the roles of women in the agri-food systems. And once again, recognizing their role is part of dignifying their presence, because those who are invisible simply don't exist and are ignored. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you for a very fascinating and beautiful presentation. Excellent. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome questions both from the audience here and from people who may be online. Please type in your questions and we'll receive those on the computer. Comments are welcome as well as questions.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I really like how you show the connections between women, small plot sizes, and biodiversity. I'm going to ask a question, maybe more of a challenge, on the aspect about productivity and financial returns to these models. My question is, if this is more productive and or higher financial returns, I would assume that commercial farmers would adopt it first, because that's really their primary objective and goal. Maybe could you explain a little bit, because I saw when you were the yield per unit of land, when you're comparing soybean and this is a smaller plot, it looked like it was a little bit of apple to oranges comparison. Mm-hmm. Could you comment a little bit on the productivity on per unit of land, or even the financial returns, how that compares with a commercial operation?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it might sound comparing pears and apples or with lemons or something even more crazier. The thing is, and why I did that purposefully is because in the current context of climate change and high geopolitical instability, we need to rethink how we produce food and at which scales. And unfortunately, small scale is stigmatized as inefficient, as just for the poor, as expensive. It yields ugly aesthetically. So many different pejorative attributes that the challenge that I always proposed is to compare very mature agroecological systems, regardless the size, with very mature or conventional systems. Because in my view, the future in the growing cities, the abandonment of the rural areas and the political and climate crisis, food production has to be decentralized. So perhaps in the near future, we all will need to be horticulturalists just to be able to provide food ourselves. And that is not minor. And if we just think about farmers and peasants, not farmers, peasants, who are 30% of the global population and have the capacity to certain level provide themselves food, we are talking about high efficiency. The problem is that it's not in the statistics. But now, how we can compare? I can compare with the production, for instance, of this. If the criteria is a scale, we can compare with large scale agroecological production. For instance, I presented an example of 10,000 hectares. That's quite huge. But I can go a bit lower. Example that I like very much that I didn't include here, which is in Argentina, 600 hectares of wheat production. The rate of return in terms, this is an economic indicator, is more than 5, if not mistaken, 5.18, if not mistaken, in comparison to the conventional one, which is 1.31. What does it mean? That means that from every dollar that the agroecological wheat production invests, it gets as return 4 point something. And the conventional one, for every dollar, gets 31 cents. This is part of the explanation why a conventional farming needs to be so big. But if we make land analysis of the efficiency, we see that we can actually produce more in less space if it fulfills a basic technical criteria, which is being biodiverse, because of what I mentioned. It triggers different ecological functions that sustain and provides for free nutrients instead of buying synthetic fertilizers, provides pest regulation instead of buying pesticides. So there is the technical reason why agroecology is more productive, yes, in terms of specific volumes and numbers. And many times the question, also the follow-up question is, so if it is so good, why is not taught and practiced everywhere? And I would say there are different reasons, but one of the reasons is because agroecology is implemented in a very antagonistic context. Agroecology is not new, now it's on fashion. And even being on fashion, it faces many challenges. In my country, for instance, that we have issued the national strategy of agroecology last year, the Ministry of Agriculture invests less than 1% of the budget. For the former Ministry of Agriculture, it doesn't exist anymore because the new administration just changed everything. So that's so minor. So, and besides having a very antagonistic context in terms of narrative, in terms of funding, in terms of education and building capacity, agroecology keeps growing. Last 2 weeks ago, it was issued the statistics of organic farming by IFOAM, the International Movement for the International Federation for Organic Movements, or Organic Farming Movement, something like that. I'm sorry, I am not good translating acronyms from Spanish to English. But part of the figures that they have is that currently are more than almost 5 billion small units working on agroecology, and that's just growing. So that's telling us something about the capacity of agroecology to provide and to deliver. And since in universities agroecology is not a major topic, since there is not the proper technical support, not the proper financial support for particularly transitioning, meaning transitioning, restore what the conventional farming leaves us and to restore it. So it's going to be very hard to agroecology to have higher speed, to say in a way, in occupying more territorial scale. if we don't manage somehow those barriers. So I don't know if I answered your question. Certainly, more research is needed, but for that research also, that requires methodological change and reflection. But what we are trying to do many times in research in agroecology is to use the same methodologies that work for monoculture and conventional farming to translate it and put it in agroecology as if it would be the same when it is not. So there are multiple reasons why agroecology is in the state that it is. It's not fully massified, but I truly believe it is growing and it is delivering at different scales.
Online questions.
Okay, so I just want to comment on the comment. That was an excellently posed question, I think, because it really provoked you to really, to give a very nice summative comment and summary of the state of agroecology. So thank you very much for that. We're out of time. We do have a couple of questions online. We will convey those to you separately. And thank you, everyone, for your attention, and have a good day.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
I was